The views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the guests appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of 8 News Now or Nexstar Media Group.
Tonight on Politics Now, showdown in Minneapolis. Fallout after an ICE officer kills a woman they say tried to run them over. Healthier foods, bans that could come to Nevada's food benefits program. And reeling in corporate landlords. President Trump joins an idea pushed by Nevada Democrats.
You're watching Politics Now with John Langler on 8 News Now.
Thank you for joining us. The nation's focus this weekend on Minneapolis. Earlier this week, a push by ICE to crack down on illegal immigration there and fraud led to a deadly shooting. And now there are serious questions about law enforcement and use of force. It's led to a series of large protests in that city and here in Las Vegas. Here's the shooting. 37-year-old Renee Good was killed in her car Wednesday. The Trump administration calls actions by ICE self-defense, but critics in and out of Minnesota call it murder.
That woman is part of a broader left-wing network to attack, to dox, to assault, and to make it impossible for our ICE officers to do their job.
Blood is clearly on the hands of those individuals within the administration who've been pushing an extreme policy.
The shooting is now under review. Federal authorities have blocked Minnesota investigators from getting to the evidence, saying the state has no jurisdiction. Minnesota prosecutors say instead they are evaluating their legal options. Also this week in Portland, Oregon, Border Patrol agents shot 2 people they say were Venezuelan gang members here in the U.S. illegally. Much like Minnesota, Homeland Security says the driver tried to run over the agents during a traffic stop and opened fire. The car and the later drove off. Eventually, the 2 people were arrested. They're hospitalized. So far, there is no video available of that shooting. Portland's mayor and several Democrats in Congress from Oregon, they say they didn't believe the federal government's version of events. Back here in Nevada, we are discussing changes to the SNAP food benefits program. State officials are requesting for a federal waiver to stop SNAP funds from being used on sugary drinks, energy drinks, and some candy. Nevada lawmakers are also looking to have benefits cover more hot prepared foods. During a legislative hearing, Democratic State Senator Fabian Donate was upset he wasn't told about this idea earlier. Republican minority leader and doctor, Senator Robin Titus, calls it a good opportunity.
I think the greater question that caused my level of concern and caution was the executive branch taking action or certain agencies without legislative input in terms of restriction public benefits.
We do have a chance to make real change, and perhaps it does require change behavior. We encourage people with heart disease to go exercise. We encourage people with diabetes to change their behavior. So it's not unheard of that we're actually trying to get people to buy into healthy lifestyles.
Purchasing things like alcohol and tobacco is already banned through SNAP benefits. The state of Nevada plans to ask the federal government to have these changes start in 2028. Nevada is also reacting to recent changes in child care funding. The Trump administration has frozen $10 billion in funding to 5 states. And in the meantime, it's auditing those programs. For now, the Nevada Child Care and Development Program says it's operating as usual. The move comes after large-scale fraud was exposed in some states' programs, notably Minnesota. Earlier this week, ousted Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro appeared in a Manhattan courtroom. Last weekend, he was taken here to the U.S. to face narco-terrorism charges. Congressional Democrats are working to limit the Trump administration's ability to conduct further strikes in Venezuela. As Washington correspondent Gabrielle Caracciolo explains, some Senate Republicans sided with those Democrats.
The yeas are 52, the nays are 47. The motion is agreed to.
A key procedural vote moves the War Powers Resolution forward in the Senate. Next week, they'll debate whether the president needs congressional approval to take further action against Venezuela.
I've been trying to do this since September to get the Senate to take seriously the issue that we shouldn't send our sons and daughters into war without consultation, debate, and vote in Congress.
The issue of war and peace, that is important. And every member of Congress ought to go on record.
This was the first vote on the matter since the capture of Nicolas Maduro. A handful of Republicans sided with Democrats, allowing it to advance.
I think the vote today reflects that more Republicans are taking it seriously because it's no longer hypothetical but real. There are some real questions that will go on that Congress needs to be involved.
But most Republicans argued the resolution is not necessary.
This is not a war. This was a law enforcement operation.
You're trying to stop something that isn't going on. What this was is a slap in the face to the president.
If the votes stay the same, the War Powers Resolution could now pass the Senate. But it still faces an uphill battle in the House. And the White House says if it passes there, the president will veto it. In Washington, I'm Gabrielle Caracciolo.
There are several legal questions, of course, around the Maduro case. Different members of the Trump administration have given different justifications for the operation. This week, we spoke with UNLV political science professor Rebecca Gill.
The problem that our allies and adversaries are seeing right now is the precedent of one bigger, stronger state going in and just plucking people out of another sovereign country's government and then bringing them somewhere else to face trial. So under international law, I think it's pretty clear that this is not legal. The question is a little bit fuzzier when it comes to American law, though.
Help me understand that, because the supporters of this and the Trump administration has certainly said this was a law enforcement operation, that Mr. Maduro and his wife had been indicted criminally. They were facing criminal charges for narco-terrorism allegations. And as you mentioned, his track record is not great. Does that change the calculus at all on a legal basis? He's in federal court now, obviously. I'm sure Mr. Maduro's lawyers will make some arguments to that effect, but walk me through the fuzziness between an international law of this extraction and American law and prosecution.
Yes, this gets really tricky. There is, the first question would be the legality, within American law of this particular extraction and the entire, military/law enforcement mission that accomplished this, right? And part of what will likely be important to determine if this is legal or not is going to rest on what the justification is. And the big problem we have is that it really depends who in the administration you ask. If you are to ask somebody like Marco Rubio, he maintains this is, purely a law enforcement issue. This isn't about regime change, et cetera, right? But other people in the administration, including the president himself, his main, policy advisor, Stephen Miller, they have had a different story, right? So they've talked much more about how, the United States is now in charge of Venezuela, that this has to do with, taking back some sort of stolen oil and, kind of getting resources back for the United States or something like this. If that's the case, then this isn't purely a law enforcement issue, right? So he was indicted and there was a valid indictment out for him, right? But, the question is, from getting him from where he was to being, in a New York courtroom, was that part of the mission legal?
Maduro and his wife pleaded not guilty. Their next court date in Manhattan is March 17th. President Donald Trump says he supports a measure to keep institutional investors from buying single-family homes. A similar efforts being pushed by Nevada congressional Democrats. UNLV research shows large investors own up to a quarter of homes just in North Las Vegas. Representative Stephen Horsford says that's inflating prices. So he has a bill to put a ban in place, and he says he's ready to work with the president.
I actually have a package of housing bills that we're going to push for, but the president acknowledges that corporate speculators, these hedge funds, are a big part of the problem, and I'm willing to work with anyone who's willing to fix the problem that my constituents face.
Congressman Horsford says there is bipartisan support for his bills. A coalition of Republicans and Democrats in the state legislature pushed a similar bill earlier this year, but it didn't pass. Clark County is moving forward with its short-term rental homeowner fight. In the latest legal battle, the county lost. This week, commissioners voted to appeal that federal court ruling from December. The ruling blocks the county from issuing fines to homeowners who do not have a short-term rental license. Local officials are targeting short-term rentals like Airbnbs over noise complaints. It's also a way to keep people from not using hotels. Jacqueline Flores represents short-term rental homeowners.
They have always been against it, but if they're not willing to sit down and fix this, I mean, we'll go all the way.
In 2022 and 2023, homeowners had to enter a lottery to get a license. The fine for not having one can be up to $10,000 a day. Next on Politics Now, eyes on Congress. Republican CD3 candidate Tara Anderson talks about her campaign. Plus, suspended but running, Michelle Fiore looks to keep her post as a Pahrump judge.
Welcome back to Politics Now.
Suspended Pahrump Justice of the Peace Michelle Fiore is running for re-election. This week she filed as that judicial registration period opened. The former Las Vegas City Councilwoman and former state lawmaker has been suspended from the bench in Pahrump since being found guilty of federal wire fraud in 2024. President Donald Trump later gave her a full pardon. Fiore is pushing the state Supreme Court to speed up her suspension appeal. She believes it hurts her re-election chances. Tara Anderson has spent about 20 years in Las Vegas as a land developer. You may remember she ran for Las Vegas mayor in 2024 but lost in the primary. Well, now she has jumped into a crowded Republican field in the race for Congressional District 3. It's a seat currently held by Democratic incumbent Susie Lee. This week we spoke with Anderson about her campaign. Right now, we've seen the U.S. action in Venezuela. The President Nicolas Maduro captured by the U.S. military special forces. And there's been some consternation on Capitol Hill about whether Congress should have known beforehand. If you were in Congress right now, do you think you should have had some inkling that this was going to happen before the military is used in a foreign country?
In a perfect world, I think Congress and the executive branch should absolutely have a collaborative, transparent relationship. The dysfunction in Congress is one of the motivating reasons why I want to run. This was a surgical effort and a precise one by the president. And historically, American presidents have taken those initiatives to exact an effort.
There's another government shutdown potentially looming in Washington. The deadline for the new the funding package is January 30th. We've already seen the effect of a government shutdown nationally here in Southern Nevada as well. The holdup is these ACA Affordable Care Act Obamacare subsidies. Would you support extending these subsidies?
The most important thing is that Americans and Nevadans cannot absorb the risk of the rising costs of health care if this isn't addressed. In the aggregate, the Obamacare policies were flawed from the onset. That's a broader renegotiation and restructuring that has to be addressed in healthcare. But in the near term, yes, if health insurance rates are going to skyrocket at the tune of $700 to $1,000 a month for families, that's unacceptable. So Congress needs to get very serious about negotiating solutions, and the infighting and the bickering and the theatrics really have to end.
Another topic is the issue of tariffs. Obviously, your background is business and land development, and we've seen the impact of tariffs on the Southern Nevada economy and tourism. What do you think is the best way for the White House and the Trump administration to handle tariffs and trade moving forward? And if you're elected to Congress, what voice would you have?
So the genius of what President Trump has pursued on the tariff side is he's forced conversations that have long been neglected. He's forced our allies and other nation states around the country to back to the table to revisit what is a reasonable, equitable exchange of value in our global economy. And so I intend to be participatory. I think they need those tariff agreements need to be underwritten and scrutinized to make sure that the economics make sense. But I do think it was a brilliant move on his part to force the conversations that have just been sort of status quo for decades to our own detriment.
One of the discussions we had, I think, when you were running for mayor was this idea of fiscal discipline. And I would imagine if you were elected to Congress, you would try and bring the same level of fiscal discipline to Washington, D.C. Define fiscal discipline. What kind of items or what kind of issues would you like to attack?
A balanced budget.
Okay.
Truly. And I'm obviously
that's easy to say, hard to do.
100%. But here's the problem: Congress has been acting like children with a limitless allowance. These are taxpayer dollars. There's proof in recent months and even with DOGE efforts that I don't know that the government has been wholly responsible in its expenditures and making sure that how we're spending money is of value to the peoples whose money it is, the taxpayers. And so having reverence for that is mission critical. And I do think we need an infusion of new blood and new energy and new ideas into Congress so that that becomes a priority again, because our financial health is something that my generation and future generations are going to be burdened with, and it is something that needs to be taken very seriously.
We have the full interview with Tara Anderson at 8newsnow.com. Just look for the politics tab. Now, as we said, it is a crowded CD3 field. So far, 8 Republicans are running, so let's look at fundraising so far. The Democratic incumbent, Susie Lee, has brought in about $1.7 million into her coffers. On the Republican side, video game composer Marty O'Donnell's raised more than $3 million. Neurosurgeon Dr. Ari Nagy has raised more than $1 million. And as you see there, Anderson has about $250,000 in her campaign account so far. Next on Politics Now, working towards a solution. The latest effort to solve the Valley's homelessness problem. Plus, the governor's new push to ban transgender athletes in women's sports. On Politics Now.
You're watching Politics Now.
A new proposal from Governor Joe Lombardo focuses on transgender athletes. It's the Protect Girls Sports Initiative. It would prevent transgender women from playing in women's athletics. It needs to collect about 150,000 signatures to get on the ballot. The measure would change the state constitution by adjusting the Nevada Equal Rights Amendment. Changing Nevada's constitution requires 2 voter approvals. Democrats say this proposal would just lead to invasive physical exams. A spark for this idea is what happened back in 2024. You'll remember UNR's women's volleyball team boycotted games against another Mountain West school that had a transgender player on the volleyball team. Just a few days left for Clark County parents to enroll their children for the next school year and open enrollment. The deadline, January 13th. Open enrollment allows children to attend a campus outside of their zip code, but only if there are open registration slots. Gia Moore is CCSD Assistant Superintendent.
We have over 260 schools that are eligible for open enrollment, and families may want to choose that for a number of reasons. It might be just a better fit for their child.
Assistant Superintendent Moore says CCSD is still working on logistics for that transportation. On Tuesday, Metro Police in Clark County held their regular First Tuesday events, and in the East Valley, homelessness was a major topic. It is a constant source of concern and frustration there. 8 News Now reporter Nick Summer looks at the problem and the pleas for help.
There's number 1, number 2, number 3 issues in my district. People are very unhappy about it, but it's not something we can cure overnight.
Clark County Commissioner Tick Seeger-Blum says the homeless crisis remains one of the most pressing challenges facing the valley and is determined to fix the issue.
It's a multifaceted thing. Most of them, honestly, at least a lot of them don't want to come off the street. We have to also find resources for them. We have to find permanent housing. So it's a multitude of things.
Seeger-Blum says community involvement and collaboration with LVMPD is key to addressing issues like homelessness and public safety, reminding residents that lasting solutions start with open dialogue.
It's so important for me to hear from people what they're seeing, what they're hearing. Sometimes I don't know, so it's critical, but also want them to see that we're human beings. We're trying to do the best we can. We're listening.
That's not acceptable.
But for some residents, progress can't come fast enough.
I've worked and lived in Mexico City,
It has 22 million people and is the 7th largest city in the world, and I feel safer there than I do on the east side of Las Vegas.
Laura Harvey, who's lived in Las Vegas since she was 17 years old, attended First Tuesday to make her voice heard. She says she's frustrated and wants immediate change.
This is the first meeting I've come to, okay, because I have written strongly worded letters, emailed my congressman, done all the right things from the comfort of my own couch, and now I've decided that this year I'm not taking it anymore.
That was Nick Summer reporting. Clark County recorded nearly 8,000 homeless on our streets last year. That was a 20% increase from the year before. Cars on the road with expired tags or no tags. The State Department of Motor Vehicles, the DMV, recently started a program where you can report those cars. So far, there have been 25,000 unregistered car reports to the DMV's registration spotter. The DMV's Haley Foster says that just because an unregistered car has been reported, it's not automatically taken off the road.
Officers do have to see the actual vehicle driving on the road for them to pull over and then issue a citation. So just because we are gathering those reports doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to go out and try and find that vehicle.
The DMV says don't go out of your way to look for cars with no plates, but if you see them, report them. Anyone pulled over with no registration and insurance can face hundreds of dollars in fines, a suspended license, and police can impound your vehicle. We have more politics now after this.
Welcome back to Politics Now.
The soon-to-be Las Vegas Athletics have a bit of a roadblock, a bit of a hiccup. And it's not with the stadium construction, it's with their name. The U.S. Patent Office recently rejected the A's effort to trademark the Las Vegas Athletics and Vegas Athletics names. Now, this is not a final decision. The team can reapply, but this could hinder efforts to crack down on bootleg Las Vegas Athletics gear. Essentially, the Patent Office said it was too vague. We'll see if they can specify a little bit more next time around. That'll do it this week on Politics Now. We'll see you right back here next week. Take care.